Welcome to the Backup Punter Podcast. My name is Keegan Matheson, back with you here for episode number 8. You already know the lead story today. We're going to talk about Tom Brady, Deflategate. The NFL gave their ruling just last night. Brady suspended. The Patriots have been hit with some big sanctions. Later on in the show, we're going to talk about Jameis Winston. He and his legal team have decided to file a very aggressive counterclaim against the young woman who accused Winston of rape. By that point in the show, I'll be ready to put my head through a wall with those two topics. So we're going to end on a better note. We'll talk about fantasy football 2015. Which rookies should you be looking for at the top of your draft? And which ones should you take that last pick flyer on? I'll give you my rankings at quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end. Now, as always, the Backup Punter Podcast brought to you by DynastySportsEmpire.com and the Dynasty Sports Empire Podcast Network. Check out some other great podcasts there. Make DSE your home for any dynasty leagues you're looking to run. Now let's get off the top here with Tom Brady. He's suspended 4 games without pay. That equates to about $2 million. That's a big hit, but Brady can take it. The New England Patriots, this is where I was surprised. The Patriots themselves were fined $1 million, a 2016 first-round pick, and a 2017 fourth-round pick. This is a big blow for the Patriots, but let's look at this in context. What happened after they suffered the Spygate scandal? Well, in 2007, they went 0-16. They were 1 win away from a perfect season with a Super Bowl championship. So let's not be too quick to jump off the bridge here with the Patriots. But the opinions here are absolutely everywhere on Tom Brady. My initial guess on this punishment, which I tweeted out at the Backup Punter, follow along on Twitter, was 2 games. I thought he'd have a 2-game suspension, fined a couple $100,000. I thought that was a nice middle zone where people could get upset about it, but at least there would be something. 4 games, that's a quarter of the season. You know, let's equate this to other sports. That's like getting suspended 20 games in baseball, in basketball or hockey. In baseball, that's like getting suspended for 40 games. It's a big chunk of an NFL season. The issue here is that the NFL has put themselves in such a ridiculous place in terms of precedence. And it's almost to the point where the league just needs to start over. Start from scratch, say everything that's happened before, forget it. We're setting new precedents here. Because it's so easy for people to look back at this past year, which has been a gong show for the NFL, and say, well, you suspended Ray Rice only 2 games. And he knocked his wife out with a punch. This professional athlete punched his wife, unconscious, and he got suspended for 2 games. Tom Brady took some arrow to footballs and he's suspended for 4? What's going on here? There's a similar sense of evidence in the fact that there's no video. That's a big issue with all of these things. What quantifies itself as proof without video? There's these, all of these arrows pointing in one direction, and it's clear that Brady was in the wrong here. But you don't have a video, and how many arrows do you need to point in the same direction to make your decision? So the precedents are all over the place here. The reason that I think the NFL went with a 4-game suspension is because that is equal to a PED suspension. If you're caught first time with performance-enhancing drugs in your system, which is usually just, Adderall or something like that you forgot to get checked out, but any type of banned substance, it's usually an automatic 4-game suspension. And I think the league is trying to group that together, as these are both things that give you a competitive edge. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's what the NFL decided to do. My opinion on this punishment, though, is that it's not about the crime itself. Tom Brady is not being suspended 4 games because he deflated footballs, period, end of story. That's not what's happening here. This is about fan perception. This is about the NFL realizing that every fan outside of New England is saying, Tom Brady cheated. It's not fair that they cheated and then they won the Super Bowl. If this was the Cleveland Browns, who cares? They did terribly, whatever. It didn't help them. This is the team that just won the Super Bowl. Every other team, all of the other 31 franchises are thinking, well, come on, why are they allowed to win if they've cheated? So it's about perception. It's also because Tom Brady did lie. Now, I hate to use the word lie because it sounds like I'm condemning this man as just a terrible human being. That's ridiculous. That's not the case. But Tom Brady in the press conferences around the Super Bowl, go back and watch those. Owner Robert Kraft was angry about the situation. Bill Belichick was irritated. He was upset that this was being brought up. But Tom Brady had this laid back, I'm beautiful, look at my smile, no worries, surfer dude mentality at the podium. And at the time, it was just charming, and everyone thought, hey, no problem. But when you look at it now, it seems put together, unfortunately. So that worked against him. He also failed to cooperate. He didn't hand over his cell phone. And then Spygate. This is about Spygate, one of these other ridiculous scandals that we have to put the word gate on. If it weren't for Spygate, this would be viewed in more of a vacuum. But this comes back to perception. NFL fans are saying the Patriots cheated again. So the NFL came down with 4 games. Will that ruin the Patriots? I think Jimmy Garoppolo can come in and do well enough. Bill Belichick made by with Matt Castle. And Matt Castle is not a talented individual. Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback than Matt Castle. Absolutely. I think the Patriots will be fine. If they get off to a 2-2 start, that's good enough. Now, I had a couple questions over Twitter about this. It was a hot button topic, and if you were on Twitter when the news came out, it might have been the worst hour in Twitter for 2015. So far, it was the worst Twitter hour. Everybody was offering their own hot take, their own example of some sort. But thankfully, I had a couple good questions come in here. First one's from Ben Chapman, a friend of the show. He tweeted in a great picture. He got a notification from CBS Sports on his phone. Now, I've unsubscribed from a lot of these things because they send things like this. And thankfully, Ben tweeted this in. It was a notification from CBS Sports, one of these breaking news dings that you get to your smartphone. And all it said, there was no context. It said, Patriots could start season 1-3 without Tom Brady and enter week 5, their matchup with the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday Night Football at 1-3. That's all it said. Patriots could start 1-3. And I thought, thank you. Thank you for pounding the pavement. Really crunching the numbers here, seeing how many different numbers could add up to 4 games, and telling the world. Because that's a valuable service, CBS. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And that's what's happening right now. All of this might. I could be the New England Patriots quarterback in week 1. I could. The chances of that happening are as likely as me getting off of this chair and flying right now. But I could. Anything could happen. I tend to look away from a headline when I see the word could in it, because it's just stretching to make a headline. But I got a kick out of that. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. But you know what? I bet the NFL would love it if the Patriots were 1-3, 0-4. Not as punishment, but because Sunday Night Football, Tom Brady runs in atop his white horse to save the Patriots. You don't think that would be the top-rated game of the season? You don't think NBC would get 1 billion viewers that night? The NFL always wins, eventually. Never forget that. Second question we had on Twitter from another friend of the show, Rodney Hines. He tweeted in, and he had a great question about the appeal process, and he asked, how confident can Brady and his camp be about this appeal process? He did, to some extent, lie to the media. He didn't cooperate. These were chances he had to kind of come clean. He'd incriminate himself by doing so, but had the chance to admit these things or make the situation a little better for himself. But this suspension is for conduct detrimental to the NFL. Is that a type of suspension that should be overturned or reduced? That's a great question. I don't think it should be. But the issue we need to keep in mind here is that Roger Goodell and the NFL, this comes back to the ridiculous precedents they've been setting. The league has been flying by the ass of their pants over the past 9 months. With suspensions, rulings, things they haven't done before. They've been moving so quickly that several of these have been overturned. Don't rule out the possibility of Brady's suspension getting knocked down to 2 or 3 games. But I really do think that it will stay at 4. Because this is a bold, sweeping statement. As much as this is about Tom Brady, this is about sending a message to the rest of the league. Now, one thing I want you to know about this is that Tom Brady is not the only person doing this. Listen to any of the, ex-players that you'll see in the media over the next week, especially quarterbacks. Now, often I turn away from, the ex-player panels on, NFL Network. It doesn't appeal to me, personally. But so many of them have said, this is just Tom Brady is the one that got caught. Every quarterback doctors the ball. Whether they rough them up, whether they put a little stick on them, play with the air pressure. Look back through the history of the NFL. There's not a team in this league who has not cheated. One of my favorite forms of this was through the 70s and 80s. Teams that were in cold weather climates, if they had a home game and a great wide receiver was coming to town, often they would freeze the field outside the hash marks towards the boundaries. They'd give it a little spray the night before, so that great wide receiver couldn't get traction. Look at the Oakland Raiders through the 70s and 80s. They were so covered in stickum that they're probably still trying to wash it off. They had plaster knuckles. These things were almost comical. They're hilarious to think of. But the big reason here, and this is what I want to wrap this all up with, the big reason that the Patriots are getting demonized here is because Tom Brady, who represents the Pats in this situation, is because Tom Brady tried to play dumb. He didn't play it like the Oakland Raiders, who say, hey, just win. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. Not that I expected Brady to do that, but it was that he stood up there, smiled, and tried to get past this. He tried to pull the wool over people's eyes. That's why people are upset. The NFL today is a league where we're able to know everything. There's no secrets in the NFL anymore. I had this thought the night before last. LeBron James, in the NBA playoffs, hit a buzzer-beater three-pointer. Fantastic play. I was watching the game live. It was a great play. Instead of getting up and walking to my computer, all I did was I opened Twitter because I knew somebody would tweet out a Vine or a video of it. Sure enough, within 10 seconds, there was a video of it on my Twitter. Immediately, I get satisfied. Imagine that 20, 30 years ago. There's not a chance. You'd have to wait until SportsCenter the next night. But this is the NFL we live in, where fans know everything, and they believe they should have the privilege of knowing everything. In a way, that ruins the league. In situations like this, it causes extreme reactions. But trust me, this is not the only man cheating, not the only team cheating. The Atlanta Falcons pumping crowd noise into the stadium, that's a much worse offense. But they're a first-time offender, and they were a bad team, so we don't care. But it's led to this just irrational, and I apologize for using such basic descriptions, but it's a stupid reaction. We've all reacted stupidly to Deflategate, mainly because it is the stupidest scandal that I can remember in the NFL. Sure, slap the guy in the wrist, tell him to stop, but put this up against what else is happening in the NFL, what else is happening on the Patriots. Aaron Hernandez, who just a couple of seasons ago was their star tight end, who they signed to a contract worth, I think, $46 million. He murdered somebody. He killed another human being. He's in jail for murder. But you would swear that Tom Brady was the man on the stand right now. Look at the concussion lawsuits, CTE. There's players who don't remember their own names. There's players that can't walk at age 50. And we're villainizing Tom Brady for letting some air out of the footballs. What he did was wrong. It was cheating to the slightest degree. But look around the damn league here. Aaron Hernandez killed a person. And we haven't even mentioned his name in weeks. So in a twisted sort of way, I hope a similar storyline carries out here. I hope the next scandal comes along and Tom Brady just gets swept under the rug here. That's how the NFL works. Every time there's a situation like this, we say, hey, this is the tipping point. This is when we are going to change. Oh, Ray Rice domestic violence? That's it. This is where we put our foot down as fans, as consumers, and we say no more, NFL. We will not support you and your domestic abuse. Well, we forget about Ray Rice. Oh, along comes Greg Hardy. You know what? This is the time. This is the watershed moment right here. Oh, that goes away. We forget about it again. Oh, there comes Jameis Winston. Sexual assault. Oh, maybe this is the time that we really dig into this. Nope. Here comes Deflategate. That's how the NFL works. Over the next couple of weeks, some NFL player will get into trouble. Hopefully not the trouble that causes harm to anyone else. And this will get pushed under the rug a little bit until opening day nears and Tom Brady's not on the football field. So it's a fascinating story, one that's blown foolishly out of proportion. But I'm going to choose to look at this from an entertaining standpoint. I'm excited to see Jimmy Garoppolo step in. Finally, the Patriots have an underdog story. They've always been the favorite. I love Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he's great. He's got quick feet, good arm. Especially with Belichick there, I think he could surprise. And that's going to be fun to watch. That's what I'll take out of this. Now let's move on here to one more topic that has me also grinding my teeth. This is something that I'm really upset about. Is Jameis Winston and his legal team filing a countersuit against Erica Kinsman. Now, she's the young lady who accused Winston of sexual battery, assault, false imprisonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress arising out of forcible rape. Those were the accusations. Now, you all know the story. If you don't still, please read up on it. It's a fascinating mismanagement of the justice system, especially at the FSU level, at the university campus. Now, Winston was accused of this sexual assault. The police department sat on it for 8-9 months. Nothing would have happened if the media hadn't have uncovered it. Florida State, they ran a ragtag investigation. That was a joke. And I'm not condemning Winston. I'm not saying guilty, not guilty. That's not what I'm getting at here. What I'm saying is that I don't believe this has been given a fair look like it would receive if Jameis Winston were not Jameis Winston, first overall pick. Now, it's extremely troubling. Now, Erica Kinsman, after all of these processes had played out and she still had not received any form of justice, she filed a civil suit. Now, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I wish I did. I'll tweet those out after the show. But she was not looking for $10, $20 million here. I think she was just trying to recuperate, her losses from the legal processes. She wasn't looking to win the lottery. But Jameis Winston and his lawyers, who I've already just absolutely soured to, it's the classic man in a suit who just makes your skin crawl when you look at him. Now, I read through the filing of this counterclaim this morning a couple of times because I couldn't believe it. Now, I'm going to read you 2 excerpts from it here. Now, first, I'm going to read you from the very first page. They write, Miss Kinsman has told many different and inconsistent accounts of her sexual encounter with Mr. Winston on the evening of December 6, 2012, and the morning of December 7, 2012. Indeed, the Tallahassee Police Department, Florida State's attorney's investigation, the hearings at Florida State University's Code of Conduct hearing for Ronald Darby and Chris Casher, the Code of Conduct hearing for Mr. Winston, and Dr. Allison Kroom, the appellate officer who presided over Miss Kinsman's appeal of the favorable ruling in Mr. Winston's Code of Conduct hearing, that was listing the different stages, have all considered Miss Kinsman's story and rejected it. Then, in bold, italicized, underlined text, Miss Kinsman is 0 for 6. It goes on, unfortunately. Miss Kinsman has been successful in one major area. She has mounted a false and vicious media campaign to vilify Mr. Winston with the objective of getting him to pay her to go away. Miss Kinsman is motivated by the most insidious objectives, greed. Miss Kinsman abused administrative proceedings and obstructed criminal investigations to construct a false tale, upon which she intends to rely in this action against Mr. Winston. Reading that was about the worst start to my day I could imagine. It's ridiculous. Now, I understand the premise of this countersuit. Jameis Winston does not just want to let this drift off and become forgotten. He wants to clear his name. But that's not what this is saying. This is not saying, hey, let's all sit down with a judge or whoever. Let's have this cleared. Let's wash our hands of this if we can. This is attacking the young woman. Did all of this happen? Did it not happen? We can't know. We can make our assumptions. We can't know. But what this filing is saying here is that this young woman is an annoyance. This is the big, slicked-hair lawyer swatting away this young woman, saying, you're causing us trouble. Go away with your problems. Jameis Winston is on to bigger and better things now. He's in the NFL. Go away. Stop it. And it is absolutely mind-numbing to read this because they are attacking the young lady. Now, don't forget that we're working on the premise of if here. If Jameis Winston actually did sexually assault this young woman, in this hypothetical, how must this feel now? Now she's being named and shamed publicly. She's being called a liar publicly. And that makes me angry because what message is that sending to young women, to victims of sexual assault? Especially on university campuses where it runs rampant. John Krakauer, he's the author of Into the Wild, which is a more popular book. Also, Where Men Win Glory, The Odyssey of Pat Tillman, a great book on the late, great Pat Tillman and some of the unsavory events surrounding his death and afterwards, a bit of a cover-up. Great writer. His newest book is called Missoula, Rape and the Justice System in a College Town. And it highlights just these things. How the young women are afraid to report, how they're not taken seriously. Just like in this situation, how the reports are just left on a desk oftentimes. No action is taken, especially when there are athletes or star athletes involved. I just have a problem with this because this isn't just a disagreement publicly. This is Jameis Winston's camp coming out and saying, this woman is a liar. She is looking for fame. She is a gold digger. She's looking for money. This is a lie. She's crazy. With all of the academic literature, documentaries coming out, one of which featured Erica Kinsman recently, this is becoming a national conversation that's extremely important. Just like we discuss transgendered individuals, gay rights, racial issues, this issue of sexual assault, especially on university campuses, it's one that's entering the conversation in a big way. Partly because of situations like this, but partly because it's so prevalent now. And to take such a stance, they have not earned that, I don't think. And it creates a very uncomfortable situation for other women who are looking to come forward. I hope that this isn't something that gets swept under the rug like Tom Brady's situation might. I hope this stays in the media and that we can follow this, because it will be interesting. And it's a bold move by Winston's camp. I'll leave it at that. It's a very bold move. And it's one that they do with a great deal of confidence. Although I think that they are so far off base that they can't even see where they started. So after the break here, we're going to come back and we are going to talk about fantasy football. It's still 3-4 months away from now. Still a long time until your draft. But let's get thinking about these rookies coming into the league. Which rookie has the best fit? Even though they might not be a first-round pick, some of these rookies can really shine in year one in fantasy football. And I'll tell you some of the names that you should be watching for in your draft. I don't know about you, but I am already excited, looking forward to fantasy football season. I'll admit, this morning, I did bring up a couple of my teams. I'm in 2 leagues that I stay with every year, with 2 great groups of friends, and they've carried over through several off seasons now. And I was looking at both of them today, thinking, who am I going to have as a keeper? Who am I? And it's already got me second guessing myself, running through my brain, and it's exciting. So I'm excited to talk about fantasy football here, and especially these rookies, because 2014, last year, was really the year of the rookie fantasy contributors. It was often the practice that unless a guy was a top 10 pick, you'd sort of stay away, maybe pick him up mid-season. But let's look at last year. At running back, we had Jeremy Hill, 1,124 yards. Trey Mason was a viable fantasy option for the Rams. Andre Williams for the Giants. 9 running backs rushed for over 500 yards last year. 9 rookie running backs. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be your RB1 every week. But with the churning of running backs on rosters, so many young runners coming into the league and veterans really not being that attractive right now. So many of these rookies are getting spot starts for injured starters, just like Alfred Blue last year for Arian Foster. Andre Williams for Rashad Jennings. Those are valuable situations to pick up on a bye, stuff like that. Let's look at wide receiver. Odell Beckham was obviously a man among boys on the field. In just 12 games, he went over 1,000. Mike Evans, Kelvin Benjamin went over 1,000. Sammy Watkins almost did. Jordan Matthews, Jarvis Landry both had good seasons. There were 12 wide receivers with over 500 yards. 9 rookie wide receivers had over 5 touchdowns, 5 or more. So there are possibilities here to find production. Now, some of these, I'm going to go through quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and I'll touch on tight end. Some of these you might want to take quite high in your draft, especially if you're in in some dynasty or keeper leagues where you're looking to build long term here. But a lot of these, my favorite pick in any fantasy football draft is the last pick. A, because you've always got that one guy in your league who's going to pick Tim Tebow or a retired player that's still in the pool. But I love taking that, last couple round flyers on some rookies that I love. So I'll give you a few names to watch out for when that pick rolls around to you. And hopefully these players, maybe we'll get 1 or 2 that will be a star this year. They'll be an Odell Beckham, a Jeremy Hill. But if you're smart and you know these rookies, you can get a great wide receiver 3 or 4 or a flex. And not everybody in your league is going to be up to date on these rookies because they won't have 2014 production in the NFL to look at. So let's start at quarterbacks. Now first I'm going to rank, coming back to my dear friend and associate, Jameis Winston here. I'm going to have him as my number 1 ranked quarterback over Mariota because he has Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson, Austin Seferian-Jenkins. All of those guys are 6'4 plus, big receivers. And I like him as the number 1 quarterback. Pro-ready offense at FSU. He'll be ready to go. Guaranteed starter in year 1. Does he have a slot receiver? I'm not sure. Louis Murphy is there from the Oakland Raiders. Kenny Bell was drafted. I'm not sure if he has the route running abilities for that. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're not going to be a great team this year. So Jameis Winston should have opportunities to pick up some garbage yards. And you will not find a man on this planet who loves garbage yards like I do. Believe me, I run Matt Stafford on a couple of my teams. Garbage yards are my everything. Now, number 2, I have Marcus Mariota. Now, I like him because he might be able to grab you 2, 3, 4 points a week in rushing yards, which should keep him from having a complete dud of a week. That's valuable. Now, let's look at his receivers, though. He's got Kendall Wright, Hakeem Nicks, Justin Hunter, Harry Douglas. None of those guys are exciting to me. Justin Hunter was supposed to break out last year. Didn't. I'm not sure he will. Can Dorial Green-Beckham impact in year 1? Well, I don't think enough. Delaney Walker is probably his best friend on this roster. But again, Tennessee, garbage yards. Really, neither of these quarterbacks are ones that I am going to be picking unless I am in a massive, massive league or in a dynasty league where I'm looking to stash one of these guys. They're not going to be high picks this year. Their teams aren't great. I don't like them for fantasy football purposes. Maybe for a spot start late in the year. And past these guys, really you're only going to be looking at injury options. If Garrett Grayson gets into a game for an injured Drew Brees, if Brett Hundley gets into a game for an injured Aaron Rodgers, where talent around them can help. But otherwise, this is really a 2-quarterback rookie class for fantasy football purposes. Let's move on to the running backs here, and I'll break this up with a little fun announcement. When I was going through these running back rankings, I was looking back at their scouting combine times, and I had a thought. And it's for a project I'm going to work on next year, so before the 2016 NFL Draft, when the prospects do their scouting combine in Indianapolis, I, Keegan Matheson, will perform all of the scouting combine drills and record them for your viewing and reading pleasure. Now, I consider myself to be an average-sized man. Well, my measurables, I'd be 6'2", a little over 200 pounds. That's a pretty average-sized man. Now, I'm not out of shape. You might need to, dig through some layers to find an ab muscle. But I believe that I represent the average athletic male. And I always say in the Olympics, it would be fantastic to have the average male in every single event. Have the 100-meter dash with Usain Bolt winning it, but just have an average guy in there to see how great these players really are. So I decided, hey, in 2016, I will perform the combine events, and then we will have average guy rankings for everything. A 40-yard dash, which I hope to keep in around the defensive tackle, maybe offensive guard range. Reps on the bench press, which I really hope to get one of. I might have to cheat a bit on that, maybe do 25 pounds. Vertical jump, I might jump over, well, maybe I'll hit 12 inches. We'll see about that. But that's something I'm looking forward to next year, and don't let me forget that. I've already made some notes to get that organized. But I'll start training by doing absolutely nothing, and I will promise you that I will remain in absolutely average shape until 2016. So let's look at the running backs here. My number one fantasy running back is Melvin Gordon, going to the San Diego Chargers. I think that Todd Gurley is a better running back, but in fantasy football, being an average running back with a lot of carries is much better than being a great running back with a few carries. Melvin Gordon, I think, is going to be given the opportunity to play on all 3 downs. Danny Woodhead, he's a great third down guy, but he's 30 years old, coming off an injury. So I think that Melvin Gordon is going to get run out there and used very heavily. I think he has some untapped receiving potential, which I love out of a running back. And San Diego is a team that's always in tight games. They don't really get blown out. They don't really blow people out themselves. So that means that the running game should stay involved. I like Melvin Gordon as my number 1 fantasy running back. Number 2, I like Todd Gurley. Now, when is he going to be at 100%, and when will he be given the lion's share of the workload? Those are 2 questions I need to know first, because Trey Mason's there, and Trey Mason's a great running back. I love Trey Mason. Could be great in a complimentary role, especially getting some passes out of the backfield. Now, with Todd Gurley, he might be your best option by the second half. From week 10 on, he could outperform Melvin Gordon. So you're going to have to make a decision there. Are you going to try to ramp up towards the playoffs, or do you need to get your wins early to get into the playoffs? That depends on your roster. Number 3, I like Tevin Coleman. Now, he's got Matt Ryan, Roddy White, Julio Jones, all drawing defensive coverage around. That's great. Now, consistency will be the issue with Tevin Coleman. He's a guy that gets the ball and he's a sprinter. Vroom. He's gone. Every handoff. I'd like to see a little more Le'Veon Bell, a little patience. Another worry, how similar is he to Devonta Freeman? Devonta Freeman is a highlight reel man himself. Are they going to split carries? But without a good tight end in Atlanta, there's really no threat over the middle of the field just yet. There could be some room for receptions out of the backfield as well. Some screens. So I like Tevin Coleman. I might look to grab him onto my roster later in the draft. My 4th ranked guy is TJ Yeldon. Went to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I absolutely love the pick. Now, he was always in a timeshare at Alabama, whether it be with Eddie Lacy, another running back. Alabama rarely just runs a workhorse. They share the workload. Now, if he's healthy, his speed should finally pick up and play. He always missed that extra quickness in his step. Does he have that? It's going to be important. Because TJ Yeldon, he's not, I mean this lovingly, because I like the guy, but he's not special. He's not Melvin Gordon. He's not Todd Gurley. But then again, he's not Toby Gerhart. He's one of these guys in the middle, where if you give him opportunities, he'll take them. But he's not a genius out there. And I don't think Gerhart or Denard Robinson will give him much competition. So I think he should be able to keep his value up later in games as well with some receiving, as Blake Bortles tries to throw them back into games. So I think TJ Yeldon will be worth a later round pick. He might get a little overdrafted if hype builds, so be cautious there. Remember what happened with Toby Gerhart last year. Probably the most overdrafted player. But don't forget about him. And number 5, my boy, my man crush out of this draft, David Cobb. He's got a clear road in Tennessee. Bishop Sankey, my in-depth analysis of Bishop Sankey is that he's not a very good football player, which does not translate well to fantasy football. I think David Cobb can surpass Bishop Sankey quite easily. He's just a stable pro, and he'd help Mariota. He's got Chance Warmack, Taylor Lewan. Those are great pieces in place, blocking the run for him. He's got Jalston Fowler, the great fullback they drafted, ahead of him. I think David Cobb can come in and have that Alfred Morris surprise appeal. I think he's a great fantasy option. If he's still on the board with my last pick, that is going to be my last pick in every single draft. Some other guys to look for, Arizona's David Johnson. If he gets to start over Andre Ellington, he will be one of the best receiving backs out of the backfield. Miami's Jay Ajayi. He fell because his knee was bad, but in fantasy football, we are heartless, calculated beings. We don't care if his knee is going to hold up long term. We care about this season. If Ajayi gets starts, he will be extremely productive. Definitely keep an eye on Ajayi. Amir Abdullah in Detroit, if he can beat out Joique Bell, that could be a great pick. And Duke Johnson in Cleveland. Keep an eye on him. He's got to beat out Terrence West, Isaiah Crowell. But without a quarterback, somebody's got to provide that offense. Let's look at the wide receivers here. Wide receiver class, after what the rookie class did in 2014, the bar is going to be set high. Don't expect that to happen, but realize that wide receivers don't need much time to break in anymore. My number 1 receiver is going to be Kevin White. Now, Brandon Marshall left town. When Brandon Marshall was in Chicago with Jay Cutler, he averaged 10.27 targets per game. He's well over 100 targets each season. One season, I think he was up 180, 190 targets. Just ridiculous. Now, Jay Cutler is not an elite quarterback. Just, he's turning into the new Romo. People love to bash on him without actually researching anything, without doing... He's a fine quarterback. He's good enough. He can get the ball to his receivers, and I think he'll get the ball to Kevin White. Now, the questionable defense in Chicago could put them behind the 8 ball, put them into some more throwing situations. Wide receivers on bad teams are a good thing because they're throwing the football a lot. I like Kevin White as my number 1 because I think there's such an opportunity there across from Alshon Jeffrey. Now, number 2 is Amari Cooper. I think he's a better receiver, but he has a worse quarterback and a worse situation. Now, he's pro-ready, but how good can David Carr be? David Carr last year in yards per attempt. So for every time he attempted a pass, this was how many yards he averaged producing. 5.5. That was dead last in the NFL. Dead last. Geno Smith averaged 6.9. Sean Hill averaged 7.2. Third down was just a disaster. They weren't able to push the football up the field. David Carr has such a good arm, but there's nobody drawing coverage away. The opposing defenses were able to just play in this 20-yard rectangle and smother the Oakland Raiders. I know Michael Crabtree is there. He's not a deep threat anymore. Was he ever? I don't know. Rod Streeter will be back. Can he take the top off? I'm not sure. Amari Cooper might struggle to find targets. And he's going to be the number 1 from day 1. Where Kevin White has Alshon Jeffrey, Martellus Bennett to draw coverage, Matt Forte to draw coverage. Who the hell's drawing coverage from Amari Cooper? He's going to be going up against the Darrelle Revises, the Richard Shermans. He's getting the number 1 guy. I think it could be a tough season in Oakland for him, despite the fact that he's the best receiver in the class. Number 3, I've got Devontae Parker to the Miami Dolphins. He's a great scheme fit. I like Ryan Tannehill to absolutely break out this year. He's one of my favorite quarterbacks, one of my favorite players in this league. I think he's going to have a big year. Now, Kenny Stills is going to be on the other side, taking the top off of coverages. Then you've got Jordan Cameron from tight end, Jarvis Landry, who is a beautiful slot receiver. They're going to dominate over the middle. Devontae Parker is going to be all by himself to take care of these intermediate routes. And he's going to be good in the red zone, I think, as well. He can high point the football. I think he's going to have a surprising season for the Miami Dolphins. He could be one of these guys that, out of nowhere, pushes 1,000 yards. Number 4, it pains me to do it because he was overdrafted, but I'm going to put Nelson Aguilar at number 4. Now, overdrafted, but in terms of scheme fit, this is as good of a scheme fit as you're going to find. Now, the up-tempo game in Philly is going to lead to more opportunities, more plays. The defense is going to be drawn in for DeMarco Murray, which, that will create a soft core to the defense. He can zip around the slot. His issue will be touchdowns. Can he score touchdowns? I think he can because of the offensive scheme they run. They don't really require the ball to be pushed outside consistently, but with Jordan Matthews and Riley Cooper, Zach Ertz, the other options, those are fine options, but none of them are Des Bryant. None of them are Calvin Johnson. So the opportunities will be there. Chip Kelly loves this guy. He tried to get him to come to Oregon, couldn't do it, so he circled back. I like Nelson Aguilar. I'm not going to draft him too high. You'll probably have an Eagles fan that will draft him ahead of you. Be careful. But he's one to keep an eye on. Number 5, despite him falling to the 3rd round, which blew my mind, I like Jalen Strong. Now, if Jalen Strong's hand was okay, there was rumors of a microfracture. Keep an eye on that before your fantasy draft. But round 3 is a steal. Now, he could start with DeAndre Hopkins on the outside, Cecil Shorts on the inside. I'll talk about Cecil Shorts more later this offseason. He's a sleeper of mine. But I think Jalen Strong could easily have a nice 700-800 yard season. I don't think he'll really bust out, but if you need a guy for a week, I think he could be interesting. And number 6, I went past the top 5 to include Tyler Lockett in number 6. I didn't want to put him in the honorable mentions. He might even be a better option than Jalen Strong, now that I think of it. But at 6, I like Tyler Lockett, and I like him a lot. Seattle Seahawks, all he's got to do is beat out Doug Baldwin, Javon Curse, Ricardo Lockett. How good of competition is that? It's, Doug Baldwin, he's a very good receiver, but these guys, again, these aren't elite options for him to beat out, and I think that he is going to do very well across the middle of the field. Russell Wilson is going to love this guy. Jimmy Graham is going to open up endless opportunities. And he's so good at getting open. I think that he can beat out, sorry, I said Javon Curse. I wish it was Javon Curse. Jermaine Curse. I think he can beat out Jermaine Curse. I think Tyler Lockett is just a fantastic receiver. He's going to be a guy that Russell Wilson will love. Pete Carroll will love. He could return some punts and kicks, too. Nothing better than when you log into your fantasy football and you see a receiver or a running back. Out of nowhere, they have 17, 18 points. You say, what the hell happened? And they have that return touchdown. Oh, how sweet it is. So Tyler Lockett, I want him in my fantasy draft. If you're listening to me and you're in one of my fantasy leagues, ignore that I just said that. Now I want to give you some last pick of the draft flyers to take. Several of these will be gone before then, but some guys you can keep an eye on late. Dorial Green-Beckham, I don't want him in year 1. If I'm in a dynasty league, a deep keeper league, I'd like to stash him because his potential is ridiculous. 5% chance he hits it, but if he does, you're going to come away like the person that drafted Josh Gordon late a couple years ago, when he had that one good year and then ruined your roster. But anyways, Devin Funchess to the Carolina Panthers. I'm not a fan of that pick. People are high. Oh, you gave Cam Newton 2 tall receivers. Well, what the hell else does he have? But Devin Funchess is so intriguing, he might be worth a late round flyer, a last pick flyer. Philip Dorsett to the Indianapolis Colts. Andre Johnson working over the middle, T.Y. Hilton on the other side, running deep route after deep route. Philip Dorsett could make some noise, especially in year 2 or year 3 if Andre Johnson retires. Devin Smith, Brashad Perryman, they're similar to Dorsett. In year one, they're going to be inconsistent. They'll have a couple games with 2 receptions for 145 yards, but in a lot of other games, they might get shut out because they are going to rely on that deep bomb early on until they refine their route running. And a couple of ones that you might look at with your last pick of the draft, Chris Conley, Kansas City Chiefs, and one that I'm going to look at, Justin Hardy to the Atlanta Falcons. Quick receiver, fast receiver. He's going to replace Harry Douglas. Now, Harry Douglas he's one of my favorite fantasy options because I always get a kick out of him. In any of my leagues, when I go to check the waiver wire, Harry Douglas is always the top receiver on the waiver wire, but you never want him. Even when Julio Jones or Roddy White were out, Harry Douglas would always be projected to have a 9-10 point week. Never touched it, but he was always at the top of the waiver wire. Hopefully, Justin Hardy can bring in a little more dynamic of a skill set here. Again, without much tight end play, the middle of that field is wide open. If he can zip around that slot, he won't be tightly covered, so keep an eye on him. And then as far as tight ends go, to be honest with you, I'm not going to make up a top 5 just to give it to you. Tight ends are notoriously bad as rookies. The only one that I think is worth consideration is obviously Max Williams. Clive Walford, the second tight end off the board to the Oakland Raiders, just rewind a bit and listen to what I just said about David Carr. I don't think there's a spot for him to produce much more than a 300-400 yard type season. Max Williams, I would bet 51% against him having a tight end 1 year. I don't think he's going to be your TE1. Even as a TE2, it's a bit iffy. But Joe Flacco loves to throw to his tight ends. Brashad Perryman will be there taking the top off of defenses. Steve Smith working on the other side. They've got some intriguing options in their 3 and 4 receivers. They'll have some nice competition there, actually. If Justin Forsett can continue to run the ball well, there could be a spot for Max Williams. Maybe he breaks out as a really intriguing red zone option. I like Steve Smith in the red zone, but there's not a lot of size there. I don't really like Brashad Perryman in the red zone. So what are they going to do in the red zone? Well, Max Williams. I don't like betting on touchdowns, but Max Williams could be that guy that you take later in the draft. And I'm always for overdrafting tight ends. I know that sounds like bad advice, but listen. If you overdraft a tight end instead of picking a wide receiver, I trust that you're going to find a receiver in week 2 or 3. I do not trust that you're going to find a tight end. Especially in leagues that have 10, 12, 16 teams, there are not 16 tight ends worthy of rostering in fantasy football. You get into so many of these 3, 4, 5 point a week guys. Believe me, I'm going to be overdrafting tight ends in all of my drafts because I believe that I can find a wide receiver in week 2. I believe that someone can go down with an injury and I can find someone like Noshawn Moreno in his final year with the Denver Broncos. He carried one of my fantasy teams, despite most people thinking he was a bum. Injuries happen. You can find something at those positions. Tight end's valuable. So consider Max Williams towards the end of your draft, especially in a dynasty league. He could really come on in year number 2. So those are my offensive rankings for fantasy football purposes entering 2015. As we get closer to the season, I'll be including some of those players in my overall rankings. I'm hoping to do maybe a top 20 of every position. Probably at wide receiver, I'll go top 30, top 40. And as we get closer to the season, there's going to be a lot more about fantasy football. In the weeks leading up to July and August, what I'll likely do is each show I'll take one division, whether it's the NFC North or the AFC East, break down each and every team, what they did this offseason, what they didn't do, who they have, who they don't have now. And we'll start to get you prepped for the season ahead. Now, as this offseason comes on now, if it weren't for Deflategate, the news cycle would be dead. This is sort of the quiet point in the NFL season finally. But I'll still be coming to you each and every week. Next week, we'll also look at some of the free agents remaining, touch on any news, and I'm sure we will touch on the appeal from Tom Brady on Deflategate. My name is Keegan Matheson. Thank you again, as always, for tuning in to the Backup Punter Podcast. You can find me on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Facebook, on Twitter, online, on the internet. thebackuppunter.com, at the Backup Punter, elsewhere. Please subscribe to the podcast. It'll get sent to you each and every week. I'll continue coming to you around Tuesday or Wednesday each week now, depending on my schedule. But again, thank you for staying involved. Reach out over Twitter with any questions you have for next week, whether it be about Deflategate or something perhaps more enjoyable that we can talk about and smile together. Have a great week, everybody.